Om Satyena Labhyastapasa Hyesa Atma Samyagyanena Brahmacharyena Nityam Antaha Sharirehir Jyotir Mayo Hishubраha Yam Pashanti Yatayaha Kshinadoshaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The Atman, the indivisible self in all beings, is realized by veracity, by truth, by moderation, by right knowledge, and by austerity, all constantly cultivated. When impurities of the mind dissolve due to this practice, the seer beholds the Atman within, in everything, right here in this life and body. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all living beings. Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. So today we get to embark on a new series, and it's based on the encomium. And I think it's probably possible that some of us are not aware of it, and some of us maybe remember it from way back, like 20 years ago. It was written maybe about 21 years ago, possibly, by Babaji. And it's a series of verses, 58 verses. And in English, we might be tempted to call it a poem, but I would say it's an English Stotram. And it's all in praise to the excellence of self-effort. And so with regard to meditation, you know that this series, this class that we have every other week in SRV, it's called Steps to Meditation. But if we have the right mindset, everything that we study in spiritual life is going to be a step toward meditation. We've heard Babaji say many times that we don't want to intensify an impure mind. And so this is what the knowledge does for us. This is what the knowledge of bhakti does for us. This is what the Yoga Sutras, the path of meditation, does for us. And even what the path of Karma Yoga does for us through selfless action and giving up the fruits of our actions. That by doing all of these, we are thinning out the veil of Maya that hides the nature of the self. So that's why we focus on this. We are SRV. And so the knowledge portion, even the knowledge portion in all the other yogas, is kind of a special thing. So, but not to be left with in the realm of the intellect, because as Swami Asheshananda would say, we have to rise up and out of the intellectual frame of reference and have into the realm of spiritual experience. So it's not that we study all of these things and tuck them into our intellect and leave them there. It's that we bring them there, we learn them, and then we contemplate them. And that's a very, very big part of meditation, is this contemplation. And as we contemplate a teaching, we open up nadis to its fulfillment and assimilation within us. And then it becomes our own. And this is one of the features of this Stotram, English Stotram, is that the one who is speaking it out, now we know that Babaji is the writer, so we can say it's him, but I think he's masking himself and speaking as a realized being who is steadfast in equanimity, and even more so has divine memory in full access. And one of the aspects of knowledge is that one of the first or second rules of, or laws of knowledge is that realization that, well, first it begins as kind of an intuition that all knowledge lies within. Now, if we take that statement, all knowledge lies within, and we marry it to other things like Brahman is all pervasive and indivisible and is the nature of consciousness, and Brahman is existence, knowledge, and bliss, absolute, and that the Atman is one with all of that, so that then that knowledge is inherent in us. And so through the contemplation of any particular system, we are opening up the nadis to that knowledge, and it becomes our own. So I want to back up a little bit here and just give a kind of history of this Stotram, English Stotram, the Encomium in SRB. So we're all here familiar with the Footfalls book and how it covers a vast expanse of the Sanatana Dharma, and it covers so many different darshanas. And think about that chart, qualification as king, and it has Vedanta, Samkhya, Yoga, Kundalini, Yoga Vashishta, Buddhism, and something else I think I'm forgetting. And so this the Footfalls book, covers so many of those beautifully. And the writing that goes along with all of these charts are integrating it for us and making connections to all of the other systems. Well, before that, we had charts. And so we would learn a system with the charts. And sometimes the charts were a synthesis. And even more so now, Babaji is doing charts that are synthesis of the darshanas. And before we had charts, we had a blackboard and we had Babaji's teachings, right? And so usually it was me. He would say something and I would put it up on the board. And so just imagine the 14 levels of higher and lower knowledge. And we're putting that on the board, or the evolutes of Maya, and we're writing that on the board. We used to be able to come away with a complete set of notes from classes, but once we got to charts, you couldn't keep up with it. And so then we wanted the charts, and then thankfully we got the book. Well, during that phase, Babaji started a book called The Sword of the Goddess. We call it SOG for short, S-O-G, Sword of the Goddess. And from the very beginning of SRV, Babaji was teaching in terms of these systems. There were the two who are one, the two kinds of knowledge, all kinds of twos. There were lots of twos, and there were lots of threes, and there were lots of fours and fives and six and sevens and eights. And so the Sword of the Goddess, obstacles and solutions in spiritual life, was the name of this book. And the table of contents went down. There were to be 130 chapters, and each chapter was a system. And before he got even halfway through, the charts came along, and then then the Footfalls came along. But we still have that list of 130 different systems, and out of that came the 10 divine articles of Mother Durga and the 24 aspects of Mother Kali, 24 teachers of the Avadut, and etc. So I just kind of wanted to give this background because somewhere in there, 21 years ago or so, Babaji thought, wouldn't it be great to have something that pulled them together? Because it was so clear that for every obstacle that comes along, there is a solution to it. Rising up out of the mother of wisdom herself, manifesting not just in India, but in all other traditions all over the world. Now, we've, of course, focused on the Indian traditions, but we can't say that this principle is not universal. It is. And that's, Sri Ramakrishna has come and showed us that. So Babaji put these 58 verses together, and I don't know if it includes all things listed in those 130 chapters. I kind of think maybe not. And the encomium is available for students to study with Babaji, so to just take up a verse and contemplate it as deeply as one can, study as much of what one can in the footfalls, and then bring questions to Babaji, or even before your study. So I'm going to, in the chat section, I'm going to send you a link. Oh no, I didn't prepare that, but I will send it to you, and you will have a PDF of the encomium so that you can look at it. So now, before we launch into it, the encomium appeared in the 7th journal of Nectar of Non-Dual Truth. And the whole journal was based on the excellence of self-effort and the importance of it. And that's really the heart of this encomium, is how important self-effort is, how transformative it is. And in that issue of Nectar, which you can get either by ordering, we still have hard copies left if you want to order one, or you can see it up on Google Play. It's available up there. You can't download it, but you can read it up there. There it is. And what I did was, I really enjoyed reading it again after all these years, the introduction to presenting the encomium in that issue. And so I did a kind of a synopsis of it that I'm going to share with you. The article itself is called Striving for Spirituality, a testament to the eternal teachings and their practice. So Babaji makes several points, actually a lot. He makes quite a number of points, but I've only highlighted a few of them here. And so one of the things he pulled together is this fourfold axiom underlying every walk of spiritual life. And this axiom, these 4 axioms, are the existence of an ultimate truth that holds within it the eternal principles of existence. So that's the first one. The existence of an ultimate truth in which all else is contained. And then you would think that with that, we would then have access, but no, there's the second corollary to this is that there's an impeding or resistant force, which we usually call Maya or ignorance or egotism or tamas, inertia, curtain of nescience, that impedes the perception of this truth and mystically obscures its all-pervasive nature. So we're actually familiar. These are kind of new ways of expressing this, but we're familiar with this. We have the Atman within, but it's obscured by ignorance. But then the other piece that goes with it is that there are therefore methods. And he makes the point that all over the world and across time, he says, time out of mind, methods have been proposed and used for overcoming this veil that's between us and realization of this ultimate truth. And I like the way he puts it. He says it's effective in ridding the mental faculty of this chimerical yet diaphanous imposition. And I actually defined that word diaphanous in case it's not part of your vocabulary, because it's not very much a part of mine, but it means insubstantial. That's one of the four meanings that's ascribed to it, and the other three have more to do with its being very subtle and floaty and kind of vague and all. So, but the idea here is that it's ultimately insubstantial. In the same way, how can darkness persist with light? So the other thing that comes up, which is often very rarely talked about, is the result of engaging in these methods. And he describes this as the magnanimous inherent qualities that naturally and spontaneously come forth when these purificatory disciplines are resorted to. And so this is, something that for whoever may someday listen to this, in addition to ourselves, that this gives us an inspiration and it should give us a curiosity. What happens if we engage in these practices? What can we expect? Well, if we're engaging in them sincerely, we can expect that qualities that are inherent in us as the Atman are going to flow out as soon as we start pulling these veils away, pushing them away with the power of spiritual practice. So they spontaneously come forth when we do these purificatory disciplines. And so in his next paragraph, and I hope that you'll all go and try and get this issue of Nectar so that you can remind yourself of all of this. He said the next thing that he said, that it was essential for beings to accept karma and reincarnation. Now, when we talk about reincarnation, of course, that's reincarnation of the little soul, the subtle body, of the mind, the mental apparatus. That's what gets transferred from body to body, whether it's a celestial body or a physical body. And in so doing, coming to accept this idea and working with it, one then realizes that there is an all-pervasive, unchanging ultimate soul, and that's the Atman, of course. So then we discover this unchanging soul. And in the process of all of this, we are engaging in spiritual practice, and this is viveka and vairagya. And there's a lot more that he says. And in the third or fourth paragraph, I have this quote here, and let me roll it up for you. What was needed all along was to lift the curtain of Maya from in front of the face of truth, using the irrepressible powers existing in the self. Then this world is seen with acuity as a relative but admissible reflection of reality, an expression of ecstasy, yet still a mere simulacrum of the original. So, with this introduction, let me now share the encomium. We're going to take a look at just the first four so we can get a feel for it. Oh, and the title, an encomium. Encomium means praise, high praise, to the excellence of self-effort. Before entering into the play of relativity and multiplicity, via the four states of consciousness, the Mother of Wisdom reminded me of the two who are one, and I meditated on them devoutly. Then, while associating with the body, the two limiting powers of Maya beset my mind and senses. But I remembered the Divine Mother of the universe and rested in her two priceless jewels. Upon opening my eyes on the universe, the three worlds appeared magically, enticing me with promise. I took refuge in the two highest supreme blessings and was still and content. Wondering at the nature of these worlds and their offshoots, I came to know of the three eternal gateways. Abandoning unrighteousness, I resorted to the two kinds of knowledge and attained the four fruits of life. So in there, I think we probably recognize a few of these and remember them from some charts. It also reminds me how also years ago, like around 2009 or so, Babaji wanted to find out, by the year 2009, we were like 17 years along in SRV. And he wanted to see just what people were retaining after all this time. And so during one of his Dharma visits to Portland, he brought a Vedanta 101 test and he tested us. Do you remember that, Akshaya? Oh, because I thought he pulled it out a few other times. And it was actually because of that we ended up with a series of classes called Vedanta 101. They were all based on that test. And they were things like, what are the three boons of life? And what are the two kinds of knowledge? And a lot of other things. So yeah, the test was great. We had a lot of fun with it. So this is a little bit like that, where when we first take a look at these, we sort of test, well, I've heard of these, but do I remember them? And so, of course, when we come up against these, it's not enough to just tuck them into our intellect and leave them there. We have to get beyond the intellectual frame of reference. And we already talked about that, how contemplating them and being guided around them by our teacher, then we open up those nadis to assimilate them. So let's take up the first one. And let me just let you look at it one more time. In fact, maybe I know what I can do. I'm going to paste it in the chat for you. There you go. So you can just keep looking at it. Okay, so this is really, really fascinating, this opening, because we get a sense of a being who has complete access to divine memory. And so before entering into the play of relativity and multiplicity, so this being is remembering this. Can you imagine having the veil of waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and abiding in Turiya, the fourth, so that one is fully the witness of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. And so consciousness is there present at all times. And that is just a microcosm of birth, life, and death. and eternal existence, right? So if we can do this while we're alive, we can do this when we pass from the body. When I say alive, while we're inhabiting a physical body, then we can do this outside the body. So, and this is what the seer is remembering. And so we can think of him as being, you know, as Babaji says, his last, at least his prior lifetime, he had a conscious death. And I'm saying he, but it could be she. Babaji wrote it though, so so it's easy to say he. So entering into the play. Now that's an important word too, isn't it? The play. In Sanskrit, we would say lila. He's not talking about it entering into the maya of relativity and multiplicity. He's saying the lila of relativity and multiplicity. And how does he do this? He does it through the 4 states of consciousness, is entering into the play of relativity and multiplicity. So the 4 states of consciousness, does anyone want to say what they are?
Just waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and transcendent.
And Turiya, right, exactly. So it's through that. Now we can also kind of marry that to the 4 stages of the word. Do you all remember that? So there's para, pashanti, madhyama, and vaikari. And this has to do with manifestation. So you have the para, the supreme, which we can correlate to Turiya. And then there's this pashanti stage. When Babaji first started to teach these 4 stages of the word, he referred to pashanti as looking out. But this looking out is still homogeneous. There's no division in it yet. And yet there's this inherent possibility for things to happen. And that takes place in madhyama, where idea and sound and meaning and all of these get integrated. So think about coming through, and that this person is remembering this stage or this bardo before entering into a human body. And so whether you call it the 4 states of consciousness, or you call it the 4 stages of the word, they're passing through states of awareness that are increasingly dense until they get to the waking state. So when we look at the 4 states of awareness, 4 states of consciousness, cosmologically, then we have, Turiya, which is all pervasive, indivisible, and formless. And then we have the causal state, which everything is in seed form. And then we have the dream state, passing through the different heavens, heavenly realms, until we get to the physical state. There's a lot more heavenly realms, so to speak, than there are the physical realms. Okay, so he's doing this. Oops, where's my verse? So via the 4 states of consciousness, then before entering into the play of relativity and multiplicity via the 4 states of consciousness, the mother of wisdom reminded me of the 2 who are one. So this mother of wisdom, he is in communion with her, before he's fully through those 4 states of awareness, 4 states of consciousness. Who is this mother of wisdom who reminds him of the 2 who are one? And then he meditates on them devoutly. So I pulled some different statements from things that Babaji has written, and I may not remember what they all were. But let's remember here that the Mother of Wisdom is referred to in yoga as the Chitti Shakti. She's the power of comprehension. She's the mother of our thoughts. Babaji used to talk a lot about the wisdom mother in terms of the power of comprehension. Not that he doesn't still, but I just remember this being really emphasized at the beginning in SRV. And he would say things like, she is the reason why you understand what I am saying. That when we talk to each other, she is there as that power of comprehension that sends meaning out through words from one individual into a receiving individual who's hearing it through the ears into the intellect and taking it back into the self. And so it's seamless when you think about it. Apparently we have the person speaking and the person listening, but the mother of comprehension is manifesting as both and as this flow of intelligence that brings its own comprehension with it. And to the degree that mind is balanced and pure and not reactive, that's equanimous, we will hear the message, we will take in the message more clearly. So here's a quote. And it's a quote from a scripture. I just don't remember which one. I forgot to include it. She who is known by the ancient seers as the imperishable Shakti is the inmost meaning of all the slokas and sutras of the revealed scriptures. Without her, O fair one, all the many tattvas are about as useful as clouds with no rain. She is the perfect I consciousness, inherent in the multitude of words, and the secret of all mantras, whose very being is the essence of non-duality. This is that beautiful verse that he's been reciting to us a lot over the last couple of years, at least. So, she was known to the ancient seers as the imperishable Shakti, and who is the inmost meaning in all the slokas and sutras of the revealed scriptures. So she has different names like the Vakdevi and Gayatri, and there's another one I'm trying to remember. Anyway, so from the word and the idea, the vibration, the inherent vibration, and the knowledge, the intelligence that comes out through all of it, the tattvas manifest, the different cosmic principles, but those are all manifested by seed syllables like Ap for water, Prithvi for earth, maybe Vayu or something else for air or wind. All of these are seed syllables, and her power is in them, such that when sent out through the cosmic mind, it goes out so purely that it fully manifests into wet water and solid earth. So, and she is that power in all of that. And she is the perfect I consciousness. So here we're already getting into this dynamic power in Brahman and its dynamic power, where Shiva and Shakti are one, Brahman and Shakti are one. So she's the perfect I consciousness inherent in the multitude of words. I mean, that's something to meditate on. that all the multitude of words has this inherent I consciousness of the mother of wisdom. And she's not separate from who we are. We're just trying to uncover her through all of her wisdom systems. So that's something to, I'm going to go ahead and send that to you also in the chat so you can look at it again. So I see that Babaji is looking in on this. I hope he won't mind, but he wrote an absolutely wonderful article for Prabhupada Bharata, which will be coming out, I'm not sure when, but this year, and maybe in the next few months, possibly. And he has a quote that I've pulled out of it. He writes, "She is the mother of our thoughts, to put it simply. She is the light thrown upon the inventions of the scientists, the muse of inspiration for the poet and musician, the force of revelation to the religionist, the power of the word to the philosophers, and the unveiler or the revealer of deeper wisdom to the truth seeker after freedom." In the final sutra of his Yoga Sutras, Patanjali exposes her as the main power involved in bringing embodied souls into the light of spiritual emancipation, declaring, "That primordial force responsible for involving transmigrating consciousness back to its original state and rendering nature bereft of name and form accomplishes both, and the soul attains to its final emancipation." So not only is she the dynamic force manifesting everything, she is also that force involving it all back so that we and her, as her, stand revealed again. And you may remember that she's known as the revealing power, as Prakasha Shakti. Well, it's one of her powers, Prakasha Shakti, the revelation. And then I told you about the Sword of the Goddess. Chapter 1 is called The Two Who Are One. Ooh. Hang on a second. I may have brought this one up too soon. Yeah, no, we'll talk about that one a little bit later. So yeah, it's coming up here. All right, so looking back at our verse, before entering into the play of relativity and multiplicity via the four states of consciousness, the Mother of Wisdom reminded me of the two who are one, and I meditated on them devoutly. It makes me think of that Ramprasad poem where the poet talks about, before taking birth, he was floating in the mother's womb, meditating upon her presence. So he's meditating on the two who are one. Early on, we had a wonderful, it was sort of like almost another kind of motto for SRV. And it was, because we're Shakta Advaitavadists, basically, right? How does it go? Ever one, manifesting as two. No, ever one, appearing as two, and manifesting as the many. This is our supreme beloved. Yeah, I think it's in the Avadut and his 24 teachers in nature. We used to have bookmarks that said that. So let's talk about the two who are one, Shiva and Shakti. Why did the Mother of Wisdom remind him of the two who are one? What is that going to do for him when he gets back into a body, or even as he's traversing the heavenly realms? What does that knowledge give him? Does anyone want to give expression to that? Anybody? No?
The ability to not forget its true nature.
Yeah. Definitely. Most definitely. Did you have something to say, Akshaya? Okay. And something else that it gives us is this perception. Sri Ramakrishna has told us Shiva and Shakti are one, Brahman and Shakti are one, like milk in its whiteness, like fire in its burning power, etc. And he's also said, although I couldn't find the exact quote, that everything perceptible to the mind and senses is the union of Shiva and Shakti. So when we think about Shiva, we think of kind of Brahman or Paramashiva, stable, unmoving, all pervasive, unchanging, immutable. And his inherent power is Shakti. And this Shakti, united with Shiva, gives birth to the universes. So Shakti is basically manifesting Brahman for us. Without the union of Shiva and Shakti, there would be nothing perceptible. Just like gold needs an alloy in order to form it into anything. So she is that alloy that makes the all-pervasive, indivisible, formless reality appear before us in all these different forms. So to meditate devoutly on the two who are one, then when we look out onto the world, we're not fooled by this multiplicity and think that it's something separate, that it's something separate from us, that it's something separate from God, that it has an existence all by itself, that it's self-existent. So that's pretty powerful. And not only for remembering who we are, as you said, but for the ecstatic experience that can convey. It can be revealed within us. Let me read now what Babaji wrote about the two who are one. He starts out in the quote that I selected, the section that I selected. He's quoting from the Mahanarayana Upanishad, and he says, "May the all-penetrating goddess of intellect, who is beneficial, favorably disposed to, and delighting in us, visit us." So these are the rishis are singing. May the all-penetrating goddess of intellect, who is beneficial, who is favorably disposed to, and delighting in us, do visit us. O goddess, may we, who were delighting in profitless speech before thy visit, now as a result of thy delight in us, become enlightened, and also capable of expressing the supreme truth along with our heroic sons and disciples. And Babaji goes on, therefore a distinction must be drawn between Shakti, the living universal mother principle, and Prakriti, the mechanism of nature. The former is Ishvari, the self-effulgent, self-aware mother of the gods, the leader of all souls, and that, capital T, which abides within them as the Atman. And then let me go ahead and pull up something here. Oh. I just pulled this, cut this out of a chart on Tantra's Shiva and Shakti. So Shaktaika, dynamic power, and Agama, knowledge of the use of that power, are identical with one another. The dynamic power and the knowledge of the use of that power are identical with one another. And Shiva is the agent and Shakti the instrument. But Shakti's manifestations are, in essence, Shiva appearing as the immanent. Shakti's manifestations are, in essence, Shiva appearing as the immanent, all life in the worlds of name and form. I'm also remembering how I think one of our very first retreats here in Hawaii, and before Babaji was living on the Big Island, he was still on Oahu. He had us looking out into nature. We were all sitting around him. We were on the beach, and he was sitting on a rock, and he said, "Okay, look out. What do you see?" And we all tried to express something. And then finally he said, "I'm looking at the ocean and the waves. And what I see is Brahman is the ocean and Shakti is the wave. I see the sky, and the sky is Brahman, and the birds moving through it are Shakti." He says, "What are you thinking when you're brushing your teeth? The mouth is Brahman, and the toothbrush in the hand is Shakti." So he was trying to get us to see that everything we're seeing is a combination of the immutable and the dynamic power manifesting it and causing action. So this is a very kind of exalted way to live, to look out. The tree is Brahman, and the birds flying in and out are Shakti. And so everywhere he turned, it was one of those beautiful examples of how, the association of ideas. Sri Ramakrishna was an utter master at that. Everything took him back to Divine Mother and Shiva, Brahman. Okay, well, we're here at 10 minutes left, and I want to know if, taking a look at verse 1, if there's anything else, anything that came up for you around it, anything you would like to dive in a little deeper. Like we didn't, pull up a chart for the 4 states of consciousness, but we could do that. I have them ready to go if you want to look at them some more, or if you have any questions. You can, about anything, you can put it out there. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Chaitanya.
Namaste, Annapurna. Yeah, I was just thinking as you were talking about the two that are one, my mind was starting to kind of make connections then between Nirguna Brahman and Shiva and Saguna Brahman and Shakti. And is that, that line of thought beneficial or useful to kind of think about and follow, or are they better kept kind of in separate thought?
This is okay. And in the way that we've been talking about Shiva and Shakti, it fits. But there will be other times when you'll want to use the term Padma Shiva So it's going to depend upon context. But yes, in the way I was using it, you would equate Shiva, or I'm still more comfortable in this case saying Paramashiva, but I've been saying Shiva as if I meant Paramashiva all this time. And Nirguna Brahman, definitely. How about you, Akshaya? No?
I'm sorry, it gets kind of late here.
It's all right. I know it must
My
be.
usual, quietude or whatever. I can hardly think at all.
It's okay. I think
I'm
it's almost
appreciating this.
11:30.
I love what we're studying. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Me too. Me too. This has turned into a real treasure trove to go back into all of this. You know what? There's a chart I want to bring up. Let's go ahead and do a chart on the 19 mouths. Babaji actually used this chart very recently, but this refers again to the 4 states of consciousness in the way that we think about it from the Mandukya Upanishad. Now, the Mandukya Upanishad is the one that's all about Om. And in the first part of the Upanishad, they're saying that the Rishi is telling us that that everything is just Om. And this Atman is Brahman. Everything is Om and everything is Brahman. Okay. And then this Atman has 4 quarters, and the 4 quarters go along with the 4 states of consciousness. So the first quarter is where, and here we go, we can look at this. The first quarter is Vaishvanara, outwardly cognitive. This is our waking state, with the waking state as his field. So when it says outwardly cognitive, that means that the mind is connected to the senses, and the senses are connected to physical objects. It's perceiving, the 5 elements, the 5 great elements, and looking out on the world. Okay, so everything about the waking state is outward. And then the second quarter is Taijasa, inwardly cognitive. Taijasa means lit up, basically, light, shining. And the dream state for his field. So even though it's inwardly cognitive, it's dealing with mental objects. And this is how they describe that both of them are 7-limbed and have 19 mouths for enjoying gross and subtle objects. So what are those? So those 19 mouths have their gross aspect and their subtle aspect. And all of them are listed here. I have this really big, so we kind of have to. So the 19 include going from subtle to gross, intellect, ego, mind, and thoughts. It includes the 5 cognitive senses. So, we can't be engaging in action without intellect, ego, mind, and thoughts propelling us right through our physical body, propelling the pranas right through our physical body, and, engaging with objects in the waking state. And the same with hearing sound, hearing, feeling, seeing, tasting, and smelling. We're using those in the waking state, but we're also using them in the dream state as well, because we can think these, in the dream state, we're engaging with dream objects. And then the same with the 5 active senses. We use them physically with the body, but we also use them with our subtle body. And then whether we're using the gross ones that manifest in the waking state or the subtle ones, the tanmatras, in the dream state, we're using, the 5 elements. Those are making up our objects. So this teaching of the 4 quarters of the Atman, or the 4 states of consciousness, has another description, which is the 4 feet of Brahman. And it's how consciousness gets around. So going back to our first verse, he's preparing to come through those 4 states of consciousness. And in essence, he is that reality, that Brahman. And he's, unfortunately, we're going from gross to subtle instead of subtle to gross the way we should, because that's the way he's going to come out. But let's now look at the 3rd quarter. The 3rd quarter is pragya, the intellectual, the deep sleep, with the deep sleep as its field. And here cognition is unified. It's full of bliss, and it forms the gateway to all definite cognitions. And what's meant by that is that in our deep sleep state, where there's just a mass of, cognition is amassed, is the way they put it. There's no object for it to cling to. So it's just formless. It's not cognizing anything. And so, but all the seeds are there, all the potential is there. And it's from there that we go out into the dream state, where we become inwardly cognitive. Before, we weren't cognitive of anything. And now we're inwardly cognitive. Coming out, we become outwardly cognitive. Anyway, this 3rd quarter is full of bliss. So in that state, we're not using these 19 mouths. So as this person is approaching the 4 states of, really the 3 states of consciousness, because he's in the 4th already, which is all pervasive and informs all of them, then as he steps down into it, all of these come into play. And we might touch on this again when we return in 2 weeks. So, but we've now come to the end of our class. And if you have, now I'll do that next time. I wanted to show you just ever so briefly, just take you down all those chapters of the Sword of the Goddess. I mean, it would be like rapid. We might, and you'd get to see them. But there's a game I want to play at some point, not tonight, where people pick a number between 1 and 130. And then I read out what it is. And then if the person who chose it, then they can use that. Actually, let's do that. Okay, each of you quickly pick a number between 1 and 30, 130. I'm gonna
3.
Okay, 3. Yours. Your thing to study then is the 2 methods of discrimination, Adyaropa and Apavada. And that gets to be something you can study this week. Okay, here you go, Akshaya. I just sent it in the chat. What about you, Chaitanya?
122.
Wow. Okay, let's see what that is. That's going to be a big number. Oh, wow. Okay. Here you go. It's the 13 inherent characteristics of the Atman. This is a system from Vedanta. You know what? Before I send that to you, I'm going to go over the Sanskrit in case there's any typos here. So, but I'm quite certain the one I sent you, Akshay, is fine. But I'll send yours to you, Chaitanya. Very nice. Okay. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. See you this weekend for satsang and God blogs and class. Namaste.